So in the last video, I showed you how I dry needle my hand to keep it healthy and loose for guitar playing. In this video, I'll go over 2 other methods to keep your hand loose, as well as 3 other things that I think are very important for musicians to do to stay healthy. These cups are great. These are silicone cups. They're very easy and light and safe. So what I like to do is I'll sometimes get some pressure on here, then open my hand to get a specific stretch on all that fascia in the anterior hand. You could even move it lower, right over the median nerve. They usually come in a package of 4. I'll put a link below. And you can also couple it with some stretches that I'll show in a minute, where you put it on there to get a little bit more of a fascial stretch, bring blood flow to the area, some descended modulation if I want to sound smart. And that can help as well. So this is instrument assisted soft tissue mobilization. And it's very helpful. I feel like it brings blood flow to the area. It can loosen fascia, desensitize things, especially as a musician. It helps you kind of get in those areas where it's really tight. You can get on those tendons and in between. And there's all these other different little crevices where you can really get in all the areas, and you're just kind of slowly scraping. I usually, on clients, I'll use lotion to make it more comfortable, but it shouldn't be painful. Some practitioners cause bruising, which I think is way too aggressive. You don't need to do that. But this can also help bring blood flow and loosen things up. So as far as stretching goes, in general, as a physical therapist, I'm not the biggest fan. I don't think a lot of people do well with long, prolonged, aggressive stretching. Even research shows it can decrease muscle performance. You might overstretch tendons or ligaments and cause some insufficiency. Dynamic stretching, on the other hand, can be very beneficial. So the 2 I usually do I'm a right-handed guitarist. So the 2 stretches I mainly do, I try to stretch the anterior forearm here, which will also get the median nerve. So people that have carpal tunnel, this might be beneficial. I like to tighten the wrist first and then push my elbow straight, which will add tension. Then I take the tension off, tension on the wrist, elbow straight. And I find that relieves, sometimes if I have tension on my anterior forearm, I find that relieves it. And then I'll do the opposite for the back of the forearm and the back of the hand. I'll make a fist, I'll curl down, I'll lock that in, straighten the elbow, and I feel a big stretch. That will also get a little bit of the radial nerve as well. So not only are you safely stretching the tendons and the muscles, but you're also gliding the nerves, and nerves like movement. So I find that this can be very helpful before or after if I'm playing a gig. Another thing to mention for carpal tunnel, there's some studies that show the hand abduction adduction exercises actually flosses the nerve, moves the nerves more in your hand than traditional carpal tunnel stretches. So that's also a good one you could do throughout the day. Possibly the most important might be posture. I spend a lot of time looking down and to the left. And so I did have an episode where I had radiculopathy from my neck. And the solution was I had to make sure I wasn't spending my day slumped on my phone looking down. I had to really work on my posture, and actually doing that dynamic stretch to the right, doing that for a couple of days actually cleared it, and I've been fine since. But I do try to make sure I don't fall in the habit of keeping my head down, because I'm already spending so much time playing my instrument here. Sometimes I get in the bad habit of, some musicians might do this as well, where you just have the game on or a TV show on, you're just kind of quietly playing your instrument on the couch. And sometimes I've found if I do that too long, that can also aggravate things. And on the flip side, you also don't want to be too rigid. So sometimes people try to get like a military posture and play really stiff. In general, I tell people with posture, you want to get as tall and as good a posture as possible, and then relax about 50%, kind of soften. And that'll relieve a little bit of the muscle tension. Because as you know, as a musician, kind of the harder you try to play, the faster you play, the more you tense up, just the worse everything gets. And that applies to the rest of the body as well. So if you can stay relaxed in your body and your posture, not only will that help your playing, but it should help reduce injuries and soreness. And of course, it's important to consider all the stuff that's not mechanical. There's a lot of lifestyle stuff that can influence how you're feeling. If your stress levels are out of control, that's going to spike cortisol, increase your inflammation, sensitize pain. If you're not sleeping well, that's also can increase your pain and decrease your recovery, which I find very difficult as a musician because a lot of the jam sessions and the gigs are at night. Diet plays a role. If you're eating bad food and drinking a lot, that's also going to inflame your system and increase pain and decrease your performance. And then general exercise is also important. If you're very sedentary, it's also not going to help. And while that might sound overwhelming and bad, the better way to look at it is you have all these optional levers to pull to improve your health and improve your playing and decrease pain. Another really important thing as a musician is practice. Not only do we have to practice to get better at our instrument and become a better player, but practice can significantly affect injuries in our health. It's the same thing that happens with runners. What we find is that if you go over 10% of what you normally do, you're at risk of injury. So somebody that runs 30 miles a week and then all of a sudden they run 40 miles, they're more at risk for injury. Same thing with musicians. If you're spending an hour a day practicing scales and then you sit down and practice for 4 hours one day, it can put you at risk for injuries. I remember on guitar I was learning a legato technique and it was really fun and I was getting good at it quick, and I was just doing it all day over and over again. And so it was a significant increase in my playing, and I developed tendonitis in my wrist. It was pretty painful. Luckily, when you have a tendon injury, it's one of those things where the poison becomes a cure. So what I had to do in that instance was actually set a timer and start with just playing for 5 minutes and then stopping, as soon as it felt a little sore. And then I would do 5 minutes 2 more times that day for that technique. And then I built on that. The next week I was doing 10 minutes at a time, and I slowly built back up with that. So hopefully this video helps. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to drop a comment and I'll respond as quick as I can. I feel like music not only fills your soul, but it also is a great elixir for life. Look at all the old rock and roll guys. Keith Richards is still alive. He shouldn't be alive the way he lived his lifestyle. But I think part of the reason you see that is just the power of music. So that's why I think it's important as a musician to try to stay healthy so that you can be like Keith Richards and play into your 70s and 80s.